Time for a zombie apocalypse! Dark bleatings, everybody! So, I have some zombie books to talk to you about today. Now, this is a continuation of my Read What You Own challenge. I have now read 83 books out of 100, so I feel very, very close to the end. But I'm not doing my usual thing of catching you up on all of the books I read that make up that total, because I have a zombie book bonanza for you today, and I'm thinking of a few people in particular that might enjoy this. So you may remember me telling you that editor and writer Stephen Jones very kindly sent me a bunch of zombie books, and I have read them all now, and we're going to talk about them. So first up, we have got Zombie Apocalypse Endgame, which is the third in a trilogy of anthologies. So the first two are Zombie Apocalypse and Zombie Apocalypse Fight Back! Now, the thing that's a little unique about these as anthologies go is that, generally speaking, an anthology, unlike a collection, so a collection will be a single author collection, so just one author writing all the stories, or maybe you'll have two authors alternate and they collaborate, and then the difference is an anthology will be a book made up of several different authors, as many as 20 I've read in some books. Sometimes the anthologies are themed, sometimes they are not. Now, the Zombie Apocalypse series is very unique as anthologies go because they all centre around the same zombie apocalypse. The first two books, and this one actually, all three of them take place sort of worldwide, but it's one event, so all of the contributing authors are writing the same story as each other, but just different parts of it, different viewpoints, etc. The closest comparison I only realised as I was reading this third book, it would be something like World War Z, where you have things like email correspondence, news reports, articles, as well as prose following characters and things like that. I didn't like World War Z, the book, very much because I'm a very character-centric author, and I know that Max Brooks said that humanity is the main character, but that doesn't do it for me as a concept. Like, I need a person to follow. These books, however, often give us several people to care about in the instance, and so this is the gripping finale. Now, I have seen other reviews. I read it first, wrote my review, a draft of my review anyway, and then I checked out some other reviews, and there were people saying that they didn't like this as much as the first two, and there were some people that didn't like this as a finale at all. I like to compare this to something like Stephen King's Mr. Mercedes series, which is going to sound a little odd, but for those who've read the Mr. Mercedes series, and I'm not going to give any spoilers for the third book here, but those who have read it will know. So Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keepers are very one thing, and then Stephen King sort of went rogue and added an element in the third book, if you'll remember. You probably know what I'm talking about, that initially felt a bit out of place, but then it really weaved very nicely into the story, and that's what happens in this book. So I'm not going to give spoilers for it, but like I said, one overall story. We're finale of the trilogy now, into a worldwide zombie apocalypse. Correspondence from all over for reflecting what's happening, keeping a record of what's happening, and then some extra elements come in. So there is a character called Thomas Morby that's in all of these books that is responsible for this whole thing, and his timeline starts to feel a little messed up. Like, hang on a minute, I thought he was this old when this happened. Da 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 da. They introduced some sci-fi elements that I was not expecting to see here. Some functions of sci-fi that are very popular, and I was very surprised to see it. And then also there's a cosmic horror element that's brought in, and I really, really enjoyed that because it was something new. Because you might think 3 books about, you know, covering the same kind of story, maybe that might feel tiresome to some people, but yeah, they really threw a few wrenches in here. I will say, I do think I do like the first two more than this one, but I don't really share the complaints I've seen other people have about it. I thought it was really fun. I thought that those extra things that are added into this story, I think that they were added quite well, and I just really enjoyed it. It's a really, really fun way to fun angle to explore a zombie apocalypse from. Let's say that. Now, within the world of the Zombie Apocalypse series, so Stephen Jones compiled and edited those 3 anthologies, and then he expanded with 3 novels, and they're all written by different authors. So this time, this is more of these books are set in the world of Zombie Apocalypse, and so Stephen Jones has got a created by credit on these, and then we have 3 authors that took it away with stories. So what order do I do these in? Right, so let's go first with Lisa Morton's offering in the franchise here, Zombie Apocalypse Washington Deceased. So we are stateside in this one, and we've got a few characters that we're following, and eventually the stories will inevitably merge. We've got who is now the president, not the real life one, a fictional president, and co, trying to reclaim the White House. So they really want to make a stand for humanity and establish that some sort of order is being restored, bring some comfort to the people who are left. We also have, I say ex-military because the military isn't so much of a thing anymore, but a guy called Ty, who's sort of struggling through things on his own when he is scooped up by the president's people. And we also have a guy, I'm pretty sure his name is Kevin. You all know I'm terrible at remembering names. And he leaves his group to go in search of somebody else that he really wants to see again. And along the way, this is a mild spoiler, but it's very early on. Along the way, he gets bitten and then realizes that he hasn't turned. So he may be very valuable, or maybe he's just turning super slowly. I really enjoyed this book. It was a really, really fun time. Of the 3 spin-off novels that are in this universe, this is my least favourite, but I still gave this 4 stars. I would give this sort of a 3.5 out of 5 for me, because I really love the anthologies, and I was judging everything against the anthologies, but I rounded up to 4 for Amazon and Goodreads because it definitely doesn't deserve a 3-star rating in my mind. It was a very fast-paced read, and yeah, it uses elements from the anthology, so it was just a really fun time. Next up, the book that I cannot pronounce no matter how many times I try to say it. We've got Alison Littlewood's Zombie Apocalypse Acapulcalypse. Zombie Apocalypse by Alison Littlewood, and I loved this one. Now, I already like Alison Littlewood. She's a really good writer and a very nice person. I've met her at a convention, and I was very delighted to see that she'd written one of these, because I didn't know that these spin-offs existed until Stephen Jones told me about them. And this was just so much fun. This is basically zombies on holiday is how I was thinking about it. There is a very, very, very exclusive, weird pyramid-shaped resort, I can't remember, in Mexico. Oh, of course, Acapulco. It's in Mexico, and it's shaped like an ancient Mayan pyramid, so says the back. And almost immediately the zombies come rolling into this one, so there are people vacationing, if you will, in this place, expecting to have a wonderful, high-end, luxurious, one-of-a-lifetime time, and they do. I mean, maybe not so luxurious. Now, the thing that I really loved about this is, again, very fast moving, very fast pacing, because the action kicks off immediately and then it's like full on zombie carnage. I love zombie apocalypse stories, but 9 times out of 10 when you read them, it's happening when the world is already set, the apocalypse has happened, and now we're muddling through it. This is, for these people, it's all happening like right from the first zombie landing on the beach. So it's just absolute balls out carnage, and there were 2 things that I think that Alison did particularly well here, which is why this book is on a bit of a pedestal to me. So first of all, This is the only one in the series where I found the zombies scary, and that's not because it's not an insult to any of the other writers or stories or anything like that. It's just that I love zombies. I don't tend to find them frightening. Even the running ones, I mean, they are scary, but they're not. It's not the kind of thing where when I'm reading I'm going to feel very frightened. But some of Alison's descriptions of how other people are experiencing the zombies, and there's a really great line in here, and I really wish I'd marked it now so I could read it to you properly, but it was something about someone's watching their mother turn into a zombie, and the line was something like the light faded from her eyes along with everything that made her her, or something like that. So these kinds of descriptions, I was like, oh shit, yeah, zombies are scary. And I really enjoyed that, because we had emotional weight and it did elicit fear out of me. And also, these are the best scenes of zombie carnage that I have ever read. I've read so many zombie books, and honestly they can get a bit samey, and here I read 5 zombie books back to back here I read, and zombie carnage can get a bit samey. It depends on what you're watching or reading. This one, I just could not believe how bloody, how vicious all of these attacks were. And I know I'm grinning like a maniac as I say this, and you might possibly correctly think there's something really wrong with me, but yeah, I like any author that can turn scenes that I feel like I've read a million times into something that feels fresh and like, oh my god, the level of carnage. So I know I keep saying carnage, but that's what zombie stories are. That's why I love them. So yeah, I honestly, kudos to Alison Littlewood. I thought that this was a really great story. I don't think you necessarily have to have read the anthologies to get this, although there are references to things in the anthologies. It is a universe tie-in, and they're all quite closely tied in, but I do think you can enjoy this as a standalone. So I highly recommend. I mean, I recommend them all, but I really loved that one. But there was one other that I loved the most, and this is my favourite of the spin-off novels, and one of very few books that I've given 5 out of 5 stars to this year, which is why I'm super excited to talk about it. And this one is written by Mark Morris. I've read Mark before. He also did the Dead Island novelisation, which I'm kicking myself about because I got to interview Mark Morris. I will put the link in the description if you're interested in watching that. And I completely forgot to talk about Dead Island with him. But anyway, he wrote Zombie Apocalypse Horror Hospital. And once again, I think that you could easily read this without having to have the context of the anthologies, although I do recommend the anthologies, of course. Now, this one was my favourite, despite everything I just said about Alison's book, because it was so good. But is there a better setting for a zombie apocalypse than a hospital? And again, we're right in the beginning of the apocalypse here for all who are concerned. So we've got a few different people. We've got a group of girls that were enjoying a hen party, and then they take one of them into the hospital. Something's happened. We've got, I think her name is Kat, I think is a nurse, and then we've got a group of boys, and the main boy that we get to know is called Carlton, and Kat and Carlton sort of form an unlikely alliance, like kind of a friendship, and I was really enjoying following those two the most, because they really reminded me, I cannot remember the names of the characters, I'm sorry, but they were really reminded me of the main character and the lady played by Jodie Whittaker in Attack the Block. And if you haven't seen Attack the Block, that's not zombies, but it is a really great little gem of a British horror film that no one seems to have seen. But they really reminded me of those characters, although Carlton's a little more extroverted than the Attack the Block guy. But yeah, we had really great characters to follow. As the plague spreads through the hospital, obviously we turning into balls out carnage again. Now, where I thought that Mark really exceeded my expectations, and you have to remember, right, I've spoken to Mark, I've met him, I talked to him for a good hour in my interview. He is a very pleasant person when you talk to him. He's very nice, he's very smiley, he's a nice guy. So I was not expecting him to just go full gloves off, and I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but there are some areas of a hospital that a lot of writers just wouldn't touch. They would just hope that you'd forgotten they exist, or they would find some way to block them off so that we're not faced with any really, really hard realities about a zombie apocalypse in a hospital that might veer away from it seeming fun. But Mark just said, oh, fuck you guys, have a bit of this. And my notes when I was reading this, like, I'm not going to go into detail, but if you think that something like, say, the maternity wing escapes unscathed from this, think again. And my notes were just like, holy shit, I can't believe he took out this wing. Holy shit, I can't believe he took out that ward. Oh my god, he's done it again. He's annihilated this section. And I know that, again, I probably look quite unhinged and demented, sort of being so gleeful about it. It's just that zombie stories, I think that for me, zombie stories at their core are about the death coming for you. It's going to come for all of us. Zombies are the literal embodiment of death coming for you to take you away with them. And so I think that because zombie stories tend to be quite fun and we'll have fun chopping their heads off and all that, we forget that that's really what it's about. And so I just thought that it was so ballsy of Mark to remind us all of what these stories are at their hearts, which is complete human annihilation. I don't really know what it says about me that this is the one that I was just like, right, I need to get it a little crown and a throne, but this is the one. I loved it. I think that this is my favourite of all of the zombie books I read well, I say I think, it's definitely my favourite of all the zombie books I read. So, well done, Mark. Thank you for the trauma. And, well, highly entertaining highly entertaining trauma. Okay, and lastly, this isn't in the Zombie Apocalypse series, however, it is zombies, and so this is the Mammoth Book of Zombies, edited by Stephen Jones, 26 stories by Clive Barker, Ramsey Campbell, H.P. Lovecraft, Brian Lumley, Kim Newman, Michael Marshall Smith, and many more. So this one isn't interconnected stories or anything like that. This is just a good old-fashioned zombie anthology made up of stories from many different authors. Okay, so I need to get the only downer out of the way for me first, and I feel uncomfortable talking about it because I'm a major Stephen Jones fan, and this is sort of a criticism, but it isn't, because I have a but and a however about it, but I feel like I have to talk about it a little bit, just because I don't want people to think that, because everyone knows I'm a big Stephen Jones fan, I've said it so many times recently, I don't want people to think that I'm just ignoring something that's going to be obvious to anyone else that reads it out of favoritism or something. So I just want to be fair, like I do with every anthology I review. So the author lineup for this anthology is not diverse. It is mostly one demographic of authors. The demographic that we all know is always highly represented no matter what. However, I'm not going to lampoon Stephen Jones over this because of a couple of things. This was originally published in 1993 and it's since been re-released, so we're going further back than I would care to admit, actually, but we're going back 30 years, okay, when this was originally published. Is that right? Yeah, 30 years or so, just over. And Stephen Jones compiled this of the stories that had an impact on him throughout his life. So we're going back stories that were written decades before it was published in the 90s. We've even got stories that go back over 100 years. As was the publishing trend of these decades and times, it was inevitably going to be a mostly white male straight lineup. Because of that, I do not believe that Stephen Jones just intentionally didn't pick stories written by women. I think he was picking from mostly classics, stuff that was an influence to him, and unfortunately that does just mean that that's the demographic those stories were typically written by and published by. So in this instance, it's not really a criticism so much as I feel like I have to mention this because otherwise people are going to come down on me for just like pretending it's not a thing. But It's the same thing that happened with Bev Vincent and Stephen King. They co-edited this anthology called, I think it was called Flight or Fright or something like that, and it was all sort of like horror stories set on aeroplanes and things, and that's a bit of a niche subject, and it just ended up being that the stories that they had, they were sort of republishing stories that were already out, and the stories that they had to pick from were mostly written by white straight men, and they did look specifically for stories written by women, and they just couldn't, there wasn't a pool of them to draw from, so they came under fire for that. But it was just that's just kind of how it went because of what was available to them, and I feel like that's what happened here, because this isn't a book that was published 2 years ago and Stephen just neglected to make any sort of effort with representation. Like I said, he was drawing on classics mostly, so just had to get that out of the way. I don't have a problem with it in this instance because of the things I just said. Generally, if it was a new anthology, I would be roasting the shit out of the editor for something like that though. But yeah, let's move on to these stories. Now, there are many, and I got a written review, and I don't think it's not going to be out by the time this video goes up, but I will have a written review on happygoathorror.com on the website, and I have broken down every single story. But what we have here, which I was really, really happy to see, is we have got some creepy slow and dead zombies, the ones we all know and love. We've got a couple of faster things, not so many of those, I will say though. Those are kind of a newer breed of zombies, and they're not, you don't see them much here. But the thing I loved is that there were a whole bunch of stories in here about original zombies, and when I say original, I mean pre-George Romero. This is something I've mentioned a few times recently as well. Zombies were originally not undead flesh eaters. They were victims of mind control or some sort of voodoo magic or hypnosis even, toxins and poisons that would kind of numb their autonomy. And basically the purpose of creating these kinds of zombies were to hold them as slaves. So we would get living people that had been poisoned or hypnotized or whatever, and sometimes dead that were risen by some sort of magic. And I was really delighted to see that represented so thoroughly here. Again, we were going back through the ages of zombies here, so we did get a lot of those kinds of zombies, and the stories were really, really interesting because of that. That the anthology was really mixed because of that, because it wasn't just the same kinds of zombies over and over, and because of the variety with the types of zombies and how things had become zombies and why things had become zombies, the stories of themselves and the narratives were really varied as well. And there are some really heartbreaking stories, there are some really scary ones, there are some that like elicited rage, and I just thought it was I haven't read a zombie anthology ever that has had even one of those kinds of zombie stories in it, so I was really delighted to see that so much in this one. So if you're somebody who is interested in zombies, all types of zombies, then this is probably a really great anthology for you to pick up. There were like a couple of stories in here that dragged a little bit for me, but for the most part I really enjoyed pretty much everything in here. Pretty solid anthology, gotta say. So that's it. That's my big zombie bonanza video for you. Let me know if you've read any of the Zombie Apocalypse series, or if you've read that Mammoth Book of Zombies. Let me know what you think and if you have a favourite story in it. I think that Ramsey Campbell's one, that was one of the shorter ones, but that was, I don't know how he does it, but he always creates such a scary atmosphere in his stories. And before we shoot off, I want to tell you about a victory I've had for my website, because I'm so excited about this. And if you haven't checked out happygoathorror.com and you enjoy reading written reviews, that is mostly what's on there. I've managed to consistently post at least one review every single week since I launched the site a few years ago. And I don't normally talk about stats or anything, but about a month ago, I was beside myself celebrating because I had the little badge came up on my website telling me that I had hit 50,000 all-time views on the website, and it's been going for 3 years. So I was really, really, really excited to see that, because that's a lot of views for just a website that reviews books. Basically that's pretty much all that's on there. We do have film reviews and articles and stuff, but those are few and far between. The main thing is book reviews, and also it's exclusively horror book reviews. So I was just really delighted to see that so many people have enjoyed something there, or hopefully they've enjoyed things. And then, so that was about a month ago, and then a few days ago I got a notification that I've hit 100k on the website, and I thought it was a mistake, but then I went into my analytic part of my stats, which I never look at, and so yeah, so it took me about 3 years to hit the 50k, and then for some reason in the last month I hit the 100, so I've done 50k in about a month on there. Thank you so much for everybody that visits my website, for anybody that shares any of my reviews, whether it's in videos here. I tend to cross-post, so these books I've all talked about today will all have written reviews on the website as well. They're all scheduled, so I do talk about the same books in both places. But yeah, if you've ever liked anything, shared anything, commented on anything on any social media or on the platforms themselves, thank you so much, because I don't make money from this, it's a hobby, but it is really rewarding, because I do put quite a lot of time into, I sink most of my time into Happy Goat horror stuff and reading books and reviewing things, and it's really rewarding to see that there's actually an audience for it, because I never know because like I said, I don't look at the analytics, I never know with the website if anyone's even reading it. So thank you so much, and probably going to celebrate with maybe a piece of cake. That would be cool. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys, because I'm sure a lot of you read the website, and yeah, really happy to have you here as part of our little goat tribe. And this is just so much fun, and I love you all, and I will see you in the next video. Bleed.